I invite you to take a deep breath as we enter into this place of recentering. Before we begin our time this morning, I would like to invite you to pray for Josh Eder. He is an 18-year-old and he was in a car accident. That's all the information that I've been given. But please hold him in prayer as we continue this week in our time together.
We didn't really have a meeting.
I once heard it said that the average person says about 10,000 words a day. Now I have a feeling some of you might say a few more than that, and some of you might say a few less. I found that as I'm aging, I'm remembering less and less the things that I've learned, and fewer words. But 4 years ago, I attended a workshop that Trey led, and some of the things that he shared about fear and our world and what that all looks like, those words have still hung with me, and I still think of them. And so this morning, I am excited to introduce you, if you have not already met, to Trey. And he is, for 30 years, he's been a spiritual director, contemplative artist, and retreat teacher that works alongside others who desire a deeper understanding, connection, and experience with themselves and the world around them. I'd like to introduce you to Trey Everett.
Good morning. I'm taking my mask off, but I am vaccinated and I think this is safe. So it's good to see you. It's good to be here. And so our theme this morning is recentering. So we'll be talking a little bit about that, which is really about reconnecting with God, reconnecting with who we truly are deep down. And then tonight will be renewed. And that will have to do with how we affect others once we are recentered. And so we'll be doing some practices, we'll be doing some meditations, and then interspersed with, I'll be talking a little bit. And so that will happen this morning and tonight. And I don't really like to use the word practices, although I haven't figured out another word to describe spiritual practices. And one reason I don't really like to use the word practice is because practice implies this isn't the real thing. So I'm practicing for that. That's the real thing, next week or next year or whenever. And so if we want to win the World Series, we're going to do a lot of practicing. We're getting ready for that event. That's the real thing. That's the big game. Or if I want to be the next gold medalist in the Winter Olympics for snowboarding, which the last time I did that, I cracked 3 ribs on my son's miniature snowboard near my backyard. So So that would take a lot of practice. So that takes time, and we do need time for a lot of things. We need time to plan. We need time to prepare our sermons. We need time to, if we're going on vacation, that takes time and scheduling and getting tickets and all of that. Christina has taken a lot of time for this weekend. And so we have to have time for many things. We have to have practice for many things. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell in a book a few years ago said it takes 10,000 focused hours of practice to be really good at something, to excel. And so we need lots of time for many things. But when it comes to connecting with God, and it comes to connecting with who we are, that does not take any time. It happens only in the present moment. So we connect with God. We don't connect with God in the past. We don't connect with God in a few days. We don't connect with God later on. This month is so busy. I've got so many things going on. I've got these weddings, and it's stressful. And I've got this, and so maybe in October, maybe November, I'll reconnect. So when it comes to reconnecting or connecting with God, that only happens right now. So there's no practice. So the big game is this, the present moment. And so that's what we're really looking at. That's what we're working on. And becoming more aware of living in the present moment. Because our minds do not like the present moment. Our minds take us to the future. Our minds take us to the past. Anywhere but right here now. And so I'm using a little bit Evelyn Underhill. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a 20th century British mystic. This book, Practical Mysticism, a little book for normal people. So that's all of us. And so it's a great book. It's a nice little resource. I'll be using a little bit of her writings as we're talking. And her definition of mysticism is union with reality. Union with reality. And part of that idea is reality is where God is. That's what's happening right here and right now. And our minds often put this veil over us. And so we don't really want to accept reality or be in reality. We're often wanting to be somewhere else. And that causes us to be off-centered. So right now we'll do a meditation. Trying not to use the word practice. This is centering prayer. Is anybody familiar with the centering prayer? Practice centering prayer? Okay. Great. And that goes right along with our theme, recentering. So centering prayer. So centering prayer is often labeled a Christian meditation, although I think meditation practices don't have to have labels of Christian or not. But this is labeled as a Christian meditation. And this is a meditation where we are continually returning to the present moment. And what we're doing is we're returning to the presence of God. That's what's happening. And so there's three stages of centering prayer. And the first stage is we make an intention to be present before God. It's our intention. We want to be present. So we just kind of make this inward desire, intention. I want to be present before God. And by the way, this is called apophatic prayer. That's a fancy word for this is a kind of prayer that you don't use words or imagery or symbols. You don't use any of that. Most of our prayer in church is called cataphatic, which means we use symbols and words and imagery. And so apophatic prayer, it's maybe new to some of you, but it's a kind of prayer where we are sitting in God's presence. No words, no images. Sometimes I imagine what it might be like to meet somebody you've always wanted to meet, somebody famous, somebody you just look up to and maybe idolize, and they walk in the room, and sometimes we may just gush and blab, but other times we may be just very still and just want to be in their presence. And so that's what we're doing. We're being still. We're not using words or imagery. We're simply being present to God. And so the first step is we make this intention, I'm going to be present. And the second step is we make a deal with ourselves. And the deal is, whenever I have a thought, I will let it go. So that's the deal. Whenever I have a thought, I'll let it go. And one way to help us with that is we can choose a word. Any kind of word. It can be a holy word to you. It could be your pet dog's name. It could be anything. It doesn't really matter. So you'll choose a word, and that word kind of acts like an anchor. And so you might imagine, we start centering prayer. We're sitting there, and we never really catch ourselves starting to think. It's always, we're in the process, and then we realize, oh, I'm thinking about when I was in 3rd grade at recess, Andy Havens bit my ear. We're thinking all of this, whatever, and we realize, oh yeah, I'm thinking. And so the way to bring us back to our intention of sitting before God is we say our word. Hope, or Jesus, or yellow, or whatever the word is. And that acts as a way to recenter us, bring us back. And then we can, maybe 30 seconds later, we realize I'm thinking again. I'm thinking about lunch. What are we having for lunch? I didn't eat lunch last night. I'm so hungry. Oh yeah, I'm thinking. Then we say our word. Come back. So that's that process. And our minds are very seductive. Our minds will tell us, you really need to think about this. This is really, really important. And, this is a good time to just take 5 minutes, figure this one thing out, do it. And one thing I do that helps me is I'll just speak to my mind. Of course, all this is in my head, so we're saying our words in our heads. And I'll say, you can think about this when we're done. But right now, I'm not going to think about this. And so that works for me. If I feel like, wow, this is really important. Father Thomas Keating, who is the person that helped bring centering prayer into North America, he talks about having a session, and somebody says, but Father Thomas, what if it's so important? What if the Virgin Mary comes down out of the sky and taps me on the shoulder and says, I need to tell you this? And he said, you simply turn to her and say, not now, dearie. I'm doing my centering prayer. So again, all this is in our mind. Our minds are very seductive. And the mind is not like quiet, does not like stillness, does not like being in the present moment. So the mind will do everything it can to seduce you into thinking about the past, into worrying about the future. It will seduce you into thinking you didn't pick the right word. And you can spend the whole time picking good words. Because you're there, you spend 5 minutes, and you're like, all of a sudden the mind says, why did you pick the word hope? You know somebody named Hope. That doesn't work. You need to pick a different word. What were you thinking? Pick a 2-syllable word. That will work. And then we'll try that. And then the mind will say, that's not working either. Try this. And so I would encourage you, choose a word. The word really doesn't matter. Choose a word and just stay with it. And then you can change it next time. But during this session, just keep that same word and see what happens. So we make the intention to be present before God. We make a deal with ourselves. Whenever I have a thought, I'll let it go. And by the way, we let it go in a very kind way. We're not mean to ourselves. We don't say, why can't you just focus for 3 seconds? We'll be tempted to do that. So just be very gentle and nice, because this is just what the mind does. This is just what the mind does, and it's okay. So just be very gentle with yourself. And then the last part is we do this again and again and again. So we just do this over and over. You may say your word 2 times, you may say 1,000 times, it doesn't matter. But you just, every time you catch yourself thinking, that's really good because you're present. Suddenly you're present again. And you say your word and you go back. Now one more story about Thomas Keating. They did finish centering prayer, and this one nun afterwards said, I failed, Father. I must have said my word 1,000 times. And without missing a beat, he said, that's great. You had 1,000 times you returned to God. So we'll do this now. As far as our posture, it's good to have your feet on the floor, both feet on the floor. It's good to kind of have your chest upright. Not kind of like this. It's just a way of being relaxed but alert. Relaxed but alert. And you can put your hands just wherever's comfortable. Hold them together, put them on your legs. So what will happen is I will ring a bell, and then we will practice for about 20 minutes. I'll keep track of the time. And then when the time is up, I'll ring the bell again. And then we'll just have a little time just to talk about this, what this was like for you. Okay, any questions before we begin? Okay. I just wanted to open it up just for any observations. What was this like? Clarification, noticings. Anybody have anything they want to say?
It's a party in there.
It's what?
It's a party in there.
one big party. Yeah.
I kept going to is, how many describe an experience you had in your church? That was another description that you want to was an experience with healthy.
Right. Yeah, so the comment was, I kept thinking, how am I going to share this with the group? How can I share this experience? How am I going to explain this? Right, so the mind is very seductive. You need to think about this. You're going to have to talk about this. How are you going to explain this? Yeah.
It occurred to me that it makes sense why external Sabbath is actually so hard that the internal Sabbath can be a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, so external Sabbath is so hard because internal Sabbath is primary, and that's the most difficult. Right. So without being able to make space to reconnect, it's almost impossible to take an external Sabbath. Or if we do, we're still very disconnected. We're taking our Sabbath, but we're thinking, oh, I got all this stuff piling up while I'm taking this Sabbath. Oh my goodness, and our mind's just going. Yes.
I kept thinking of how I could bring this back to my own congregation. And it's, yeah.
Yeah. So, and we try to make it more practical. Or the mind does that. Let's control this. How can I do something with this? How can I make this a church growth thing? And that's not what this is about, right? Yeah.
The rain.
The rain? Okay.
It started.
Okay. So you said you noticed the rain?
Yeah, the sound of the rain.
Okay, yeah. I can't really see, so just go ahead and speak up.
I've been doing this since the start of COVID, just because between presidential election, aftermath of it, COVID, resurgence, all of that. And what I've noticed all the way along is as soon as I lose my focus, my whole body tenses up. And when I come back, then the first thing I have to do is just go through my whole body and get myself to relax again, which has been really helpful.
Yeah, good. Yeah, there is that connection with our bodies and our minds. And so, yeah, we often don't realize how tense we are and how we carry ourselves. And, reconnecting, getting into that spacious place helps us to notice that.
Those thoughts that came up, the distracting thoughts or whatever we can call them, were things I don't think I've ever thought of before.
Do you want to share those? Yeah, I mean, maybe these are thoughts we've never thought of. A lot of times we're very unaware of what we're thinking. So our mind is constantly almost in control. It's thinking for us. And our mind is not us, but we get identified and think, I am my mind. And our mind is constantly moving, thinking, and a lot of times we're just unaware of all the things that are going through our mind. And so maybe these are brand new thoughts. Maybe they're just thoughts that you're very focused and you're aware of them. I mean, who knows? Yes?
I found that as I stopped my thoughts, images would pop into my.
Yeah, so images often come up. Again, that's the mind. Making images. I remember when I first started centering prayer, I tried to make this black screen come up like at a theater, big black curtain. So I'm sitting there, and then little people from outside the curtain would come peek out, and I'm trying to get rid of it. Yeah, so all kinds of things. Yes?
Jesus, all of my thoughts, I just realized Jesus and God never came up. I think about Jesus and God all the time professionally. And so it was a Sabbath from Jesus and God.
Okay. Yeah?
I tend to fall asleep when I do century prayer. I tend to doze off.
Okay, yeah, you doze off. A lot of people do that. We doze off when we're still. When our body is still, when our mind gets a little more still. Sometimes that's an indication that we're sleep deprived. We need rest. We're constantly running, we're constantly thinking, and that's okay. That's one reason we have this relaxed, upright position to help us from falling asleep. And if we do fall asleep, it's okay. It's okay.
I have a follow-up on that, I guess. To say I had a Sabbath for Jesus and God, I don't want that to sound like, you sacrilegious, Too late, Phil. But, honestly what it was is, it was a Sabbath from the professional thinking of Jesus and God. And I realized that the spiritual or the soulful thinking of Jesus and God wasn't there.
Okay.
And that's a sad realization, but that's what I mean.
Right. So we can use Jesus and God in a professional sense. I'm leading this church, and Jesus and God. How can I work this in? But also, it's okay to not be thinking about Jesus and God. Why? Our mind will say, "Yeah, think about Him. That's holy. That's good." But really, what we're doing is when we're present, we are completely present to God. So we don't have to be thinking. Our mind will tell us, "Yeah, think something holy. That's good." No, we're just present to what is. And God is the reality. God is present right here. And so, we may not be thinking about Jesus and God, but we are present to them. And that's vital. Yeah.
I was trying to get the black screen like you said, but then I thought, I gotta look for God in here somewhere. And then I focused really hard, like right outside of your headlights. And then I just pictured the Vikings game last night.
Yeah, it's really interesting what goes on, and a lot of times it's good to just follow the thought for once we realize, I'm thinking. It's good to just kind of see where this thought is going, and we're aware now, and then the thought often just kind of fades away on its own because now we're aware, we're watching it. But we can't say stop thinking or command it to stop. Basically, awareness begins to dissolve it. We wake up, oh yeah, I'm thinking, and that begins to dissolve the thought. And that's okay, so that's all we need. Yeah?
I found it ironic how we started praying or talking to God or however we were doing, whatever we were doing, but instantly the air came on. And what I felt like God kind of spoke to me in that moment was that's kind of how He is within our lives. But we need to be aware of Him and aware that He is very present within our lives and He's moving. And for me, I felt like God was really saying, you as a leader need to make sure that you're focusing on me and you're letting my truth and come into my life and that I'm taking that time to pray and talk to Him. And that really, it was powerful for me because I felt like that was the kickstart to everything that
Yeah, one more.
I always get this weird thing when I do centering prayer where my hands all of a sudden about halfway through feel like huge and heavy. Like did anybody else get that? still not only my mind, but my body enough to actually feel my body as it is. It's just kind of, but it feels weird. It's like Mickey Mouse hands, you know?
Yeah, sometimes our body does weird things when we're really in the present moment, when we're meditating. I've had people say their hands kind of sometimes just get lighter, they just lift a little bit, and yours get heavier. And yeah, it's good just to be aware of that. And when our mind says, wow, those Mickey Mouse hands, we realize, oh yeah, I'm thinking again. I'm thinking.
You should have warned us about all the side effects.
Lots of side effects. So this is very powerful. One term for this is when we're focused is called being conscious. And when we're lost in our mind, we're unconscious. So when we are conscious people in a group, it's very powerful. When you are a conscious person, when you're focused, you are a very powerful presence in your churches. When somebody is unconscious, they are also very powerful. And an unconscious person can draw us and others into unconsciousness, into reactivity. You know, somebody's just frantic about something or angry, and suddenly we're arguing too. You know, Facebook, prime example. You know, and so we can be drawn quickly and easily drawn into unconsciousness. So part of our role as a leader is to do what we can to remain an alert presence. So we do not, maybe everybody in the room can be drawn into that unconsciousnness, but we don't. And our presence can then infect or affect others in the room. So it's good practice when we go back to our churches to remember, and it has an effect on people, which we'll talk about in tonight's session. Often it has an effect that people don't realize, but it does have an effect. So right now what I'd like to do is we're going to take a 15-minute break, and I'd like for you to do what you can to keep this presence when you get up, whatever that means to you. Maybe you'll get up a little more slowly, maybe you won't speak as much, maybe you won't look at your phone as much. Whatever you can do to just be present, whatever that means to you, and check your phones. Let's see, let's say 10:45. If you could be back at 10:45 before we resume. Thanks. Okay. See, some of you got some snacks. Apparently the snacks were still in the oven. So we're starting a little later. That's okay. So, yeah, so we're talking about recentering. And, you know, actually, part of that means that everything that happens this weekend, anything I say, our music, our worship, you know, those wonderful times together, any information we get is all secondary this weekend. And what is primary is this reconnection. What is primary is being present to God, being present to who we truly are deep down. That is what is primary. It's kind of like a bowl, and what is in the bowl is sort of secondary. But the bowl, or the space that makes up the inside of the bowl, that is what is primary. That is what makes it all possible. And so, one way to think about our place in life is we can think about us as human beings, and the human part of us is this horizontal timeline. And so we're born, we grow up, we go to school, we get jobs, we get married or not, we have kids or not, we move around, we take vacations, we learn, we experience intense suffering, we experience joy, and then we die. And so this is this human, you might think of this as human, this horizontal axis. But also there's this vertical axis, and that is this being axis, the human and the being. And that is this axis of the divine. That's the axis of connecting with who we really are, deep down. And so what happens is we kind of get lost on this horizontal axis. Another term is we fall asleep, which is this spiritual term all through Scripture and other traditions of, waking up. Jesus says, wake up, keep awake. And so it's this great image of we kind of fall asleep. We go into this dreamlike state, and we become disconnected to this vertical axis of God's presence, of our true identity, our true self, our real self, being a true human being, our Christ self. There's all these different terms that are used to describe who we are. And so we get lost on this horizontal axis, and what happens is we sort of become identified with our mind. It's all about thinking, it's all about our mind. And we are, in some sense, our mind, but we are much more than our mind. We're much greater than just this. This is just a very tiny, tiny aspect of who we are, but we get identified completely with our thinking. And this doesn't happen with animals. Animals are sort of, below thinking. And it's great to watch animals, to kind of see what it's like to not be identified with the mind. So, so animals are kind of, you might think of animals below thinking. We are on the level of thinking and consciousness, but then we get stuck in our minds right here instead of moving a little higher. And so animals, you can watch animals and they're just themselves, totally, completely. We have a cat. We got a cat last year during COVID for our kids mostly, but now we have it, so it's a big trick. So, our cat, I'll just watch our cat, and it just does what it does. It lays around all day, it sleeps, it gets up, it looks out the window, it meows, it wants to go outside. We don't let it outside sometimes, and then it just walks away, it goes back to sleep. I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure it's not like thinking, you jerk, why don't you let me outside? It's fine. It's fine. It's just doing its cat thing. It sleeps all day. It doesn't feel guilty. It's not thinking, I'm so lazy. Why am I so lazy? It's just doing what it does. The other night, it has this bad habit lately of starting to meow or cry. Not even a meow. It's this strange, almost human cry noise right outside of our door, our bedroom door, in the middle of the night, just wanting attention. And so the other night I just was fed up, and I picked her up and I took her downstairs and I put her in the basement and closed the door. So she's just there with her kitty litter, and that's it. So then at 6 o'clock in the morning I opened the door, the basement door, and Theo comes out and she just rubs against my leg and purrs, and then walks over to her food dish, and then comes over to me to be petted. You know, if she had a human brain, a human mind, that wouldn't happen. You know, you can imagine, she'd come out and look at me, maybe hiss, go pout. You know, the next week she's still thinking about it. He put me in the basement. I just meowed one time. 2 years later, she's still thinking about it. So this is not the animal's reality. And often we can take notes of this because the animal is being exactly what God intended the animal to be. It's just being the animal. The tree is being the tree. The grass is being the grass. The cat is being the cat. And there's no drama. There's no anxiety. It is just what it is. That's, you know, sometimes people say, my church is in nature, or my church is at the lake. That's where I experience God. Sometimes that's just, you know, made up. That, you know, they're just saying that to us. Sometimes that's real. Why is it people experience God very intensely in nature? And one reason is because there is this sense, we can pick up on this sense of everything is as it should be. The forest is as it should be. It is there. It is present. It is being what it is. The lake is being what it is. And there is a sense of peace we can experience. And so we get on this, we're on this human part of us, this human timeline, and we get identified and trapped in our thinking. Evelyn Underhill explains it in a many variety neat ways. She says it's like a tapestry. There's a window. You can look out the window and see this beautiful scenery, but the mind makes a tapestry instead and weaves these threads and looks and likes certain colors, puts them in, doesn't like certain colors, doesn't put them in, likes the hills, makes even more hills in the tapestry, doesn't like the dead tree, doesn't put it in, and just makes this pseudo-reality. And we begin looking at that tapestry rather than looking at reality. Our mind, we're looking at what our mind is wanting to see and perceive, what our mind likes and dislikes, and we begin to look at reality through our mind, instead of seeing reality for really what it is. And so we get kind of trapped in this. Another image she had is our mind makes this movie screen. So it's just like a little movie of what we think is happening. It's not the real thing, but it's the movie, and we're seduced by that. We want to watch the movie. Another image she says is it's just this veil or curtain that's put between us and what is really happening. And so it's very challenging because the mind, when we begin to believe everything our mind says and begin to identify with our minds, it causes a lot of problems because our minds love drama. The mind loves being of separation, of being able to judge and say, you're this way, but I'm this way. The mind loves being right. The mind loves to constantly, mind loves to live in the past. And so the mind loves all of these things, and then it plays out in our life. We begin to live this way. And we begin to live constantly anxious about the future. And we begin to live regretting all these things we've done in the past. And we begin to live according to what our mind sort of thinks or tells us. So sometimes there may be somebody that has this belief that everybody's out to get them. Everybody's a crook. Everybody's trying to get something from me, trying to cheat me. So somebody's thinking this, okay? Their mind is telling this. So what happens? They go out into the world and they start seeing crooks and thieves. And they start realizing this person, let me count my change. I'm missing a nickel. That store clerk did that on purpose. A person cut in front of me. They must have done that on purpose. Look how people are driving around me. And so we begin, maybe it's selective perception. Maybe that's always there, but now we see it all the time because that's what we're thinking about. It's like when I had a Jeep in high school. I never saw Jeeps very often. Then when I bought a Jeep, Jeeps are everywhere. I saw them all over the roads. I couldn't believe it. Why did everybody buy a Jeep when I did? So we begin to have selective perception. And so if our mind is saying all this stuff, we begin seeing it everywhere. And sometimes maybe it just manifests because we're thinking of it so much and we're looking for it and dreading it and regretting it. And so our minds, we spend our time constantly judging, constantly labeling, and rather than experiencing life as it is, without all of the labeling and judging and all of this thought process. And so, for example, we see somebody walking across the street in front of us, and there's a liquor store on the other side of the street, and our mind kicks in. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I can't believe they're going to the liquor store. What's going on? Maybe I should pray for them. What's the deal with why do people drink so early in the morning? Man, it's just a sad world we live in. And all of this. And what really happened? We saw somebody walk across the street. Is what happened. And the rest was our mind. And so this happens all the time. And our work is to begin to come back to the present moment and realize, okay, this is what's happening. And we come back and we recenter. Sometimes our minds make us see things that really aren't even there, or hear things that weren't said. We get into an argument with our spouse or somebody. Well, they said that. No, they didn't say that. Yes, I heard them. No, they did not say that. Did they? Who knows? But our minds can bring in all kinds of stuff. A few years ago, I was riding my bike with my wife on a little trail. And my bike has this little mirror on one of the handlebars. So I can always, if I'm riding through town, I can see if anybody's behind me. So we're riding on this trail, and I watched this couple. They're coming toward me. First man, then this woman. And they pass us on this trail, go right past us. And my wife's ahead of me, and then I'm there. And so as they pass, I look in my little mirror, and I can see them, I have this image of them just biking away, right? And then I realized my mirror wasn't there. And so a couple days before the bike trip, my mirror had broken, so I didn't have it. So what had happened was, the split second that my eyes were going to the mirror, my mind created what I thought I should see. And then when I finally focused on no mirror, it kind of freaked me out. And that's why I remember it so well. because it was this very vivid image, very real, but it never happened. And so this, I imagine if my mirror was there, I would have looked in the mirror and melded the image with kind of what my mind wanted or made up, and I would have forgotten about it. So this happens a lot. It is very challenging when many people live this way. And sometimes people may say, well, what's so bad about this? Well, one idea is this is why we have so much conflict and war. We have almost insanity that happens. We have to just look at the first part of the 20th century and all the wars and the people that were killed and all that happens now. We see what happens when a group of people, unconscious people, get together, and it's kind of becomes insanity. And it's all based on our thoughts, what we think should happen, what we think somebody should look like. It's based on if somebody challenges my belief system, which is in my mind. I don't like that. It makes me angry. That's my identity. Now I'm going to attack you. And so we have all of this challenge and pain and suffering because we're so identified with our minds. And then the other thing that's difficult about this is it keeps us from really knowing who we truly are. That vertical axis. It keeps us from really connecting with God. And so when we begin to wake up, when we begin to really be in the present moment and connect, we realize, like Jesus talks about. Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. And we know that, and we love that, and we want others to know that. And then Jesus says in another place, you are the light of the world. And we forget that. But it's good for us to reconnect and remember, I am the light of the world. Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of God interchangeably all throughout the Gospels. And then he says, the kingdom of heaven is in you. In us, in this very deep sense, this spaciousness, this beauty, this love, all of this deep within us. I often read out of the Gospel of Thomas, and this one passage says this: if your spiritual guide says to you, look, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds will get there ahead of you. If they say the kingdom is in the sea, the fish will precede you. But no, the divine realm is inside all of you. When you come to know yourself, you will be known. And that's just really beautiful. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And so we have this sense of when we can really be aware and alert. And I'm not saying we can't use our minds. Definitely our minds are great tools. But when we can be alert and not be used by our minds, it is very beautiful and powerful. And we often do this. We're not often aware of when we're really focused. Sometimes, we may pick up a cup of coffee and we're not thinking, we're just very aware of that cup. And there's just this moment of presence. And then we forget, because it's kind of boring. Our mind doesn't like boring. But we were aware. Remember the last time you were free climbing this sheer rock cliff without any ropes? And if you fell, you fall to your death. Well, maybe you don't do that. Maybe some of you do. I don't do that. But can you imagine a person free climbing a sheer cliff? They're finding little cracks. You know, her fingers are just really taped up and strong, and just finding these little cracks, and then getting this powder and going to the next place. You know, what's going through her mind? Man, I hope I can get through this next week. I've got this funeral. And oh my gosh, my poor chairman's got to talk to me. No, that doesn't, she is completely focused. And so we do have times when we can, when our mind does stop. We do have those times. And learning to be present helps us to do that more and more. This one last quote, and then we're going to do another practice. This last quote is by Martha Graham, who teaches dance. And she said this about the art of dance. She says, "All that is important is this one moment in movement. Make the moment vital and worth living. Do not let it slip away unnoticed and unused." And so that's what we're doing. We're making this moment we're in vital. We're not letting it go unused. We're being aware. And again, what that does is it reconnects us with the presence of God. It reconnects us with who we are. And our mind we're not being possessed by our mind in that moment. And so what we're going to do right now is this next practice is a walking meditation. And so what we're going to do is in a moment we'll be free to go, and you can, I guess you don't have to walk, you can stay seated right here if you'd like, but I encourage you to walk around, and I would like for you to do what you can to stay present and focused. So that means we'll do this in silence. I encourage you not to get your phones out. If your mind just keeps bugging you about your phone, tell it at lunchtime. We will look at it, but not right now. And I'd like for you to move around and see where you end up. So we're not letting our minds say, oh, you better not go over there, or why don't you do this? We're just focused. We do that by noticing what's in front of us. We do that by being aware of our surroundings. We do that by noticing our senses, what we're feeling, what we hear. We're just noticing all that's around us, all of reality, and we're walking around and we're practicing. There we go, practicing. We're being present. We're being present as much as we can. And when we catch ourselves not present, when we catch ourselves judging something, when we catch ourselves looking at a tree and thinking, oh yeah, that's an oak tree. My aunt had an oak tree like that. I didn't like her. You know, that will happen. And when we catch ourselves doing that, we just gently be kind. That's what the mind does. And we go back, just tree. We don't have to label every single thing. And we're just walking around. And we're noticing. And we're seeing what this is like. And so, we will try this. Again, do what you can to stay in silence. And let's come back at 11:45. Actually, let's come back at 11:40, and then we'll have a few minutes just to chat about this, what this was like for us. So, I'll ring the bell.
And then we will begin.
Okay. Good job with this being silent and seeing what this was like. So let's just want to take a few minutes for anyone who would like to share their observations, noticings, any questions or clarification.
I think it was harder when we were moving because there were more distractions.
Okay, harder when moving around versus centering prayer.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So more distractions. Yeah.
I actually noticed the opposite. I don't know if it's just me, movement helped, or how the centering practice first really connected me to my breath, and so then could connect my breath to my steps, and it gelled.
Okay, so the opposite, you were able to be present in a deeper way with this walking meditation. Okay? Yeah.
I found it really refreshing to be out there and have no expectations except to observe and be present, seeing all sorts of little things, incredible intricate patternings of bark, leaves. But there was one intrusion of my mind for which I was grateful. I was bending down to smell some flowers and my mind said poison ivy.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's good. It is refreshing when we don't have expectations. Either expectations from others or expectations mostly we put on ourselves. And so it's nice, there was nothing to do. Just see where you ended up and see what that was like. And that can be it creates this space that we often are not in contact with or aware of. And that space is very healing and refreshing and engaging and intelligent. So our mind will say, you've got to think all the time or you'll be stupid. And that's not true. We can know what to do in the moment. We can take wise action and give wise speech in the moment without trying to do these preconceived gymnastics, figuring everything out. And I got to make sure to say the right thing and calculate exactly where I need to go. We do have a great intelligence about us when we're in the present moment. Yes?
Well, I wanted to take out my phone and take pictures. I didn't, but to kind of capture that presence.
Okay. Yeah, you wanted to take your phone out to capture the presence. Okay. Well, and so one question is, what would that look like? So that presence that arises I mean, it's always there, right? We're always in the present moment, always. There is never a time we're not. So it's always there, and nature is always in it. We are in it. We're just not aware of it. We're just often wanting to be anywhere else. Our minds want to be anywhere else but in the present. Yes?
So I take pictures all the time when I'm walking, and I didn't resist the urge because I realized I see the present in a different way through my camera. And it certainly can be a distraction, and it can even be a consumer mentality. Ooh, I want to get this one, and I want to get that one, and I want to do 3 of this. But I never realized that that's part of what I am doing, not only artistically, but spiritually. It helps me be in the present moment better, so I didn't necessarily see it like a bad thing.
Great. Yeah, I don't remember if I said this morning, there was a quote, the fool does not see the same tree a wise man sees. I don't know if I said that this morning. But yeah, and it's, you know, the wise person or the present person sees something much different than somebody that's caught up in their mental habit patterns. Yes?
I found that I still need a central thing to put my focus on and to kind of give my full kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? My full kind of fascinated attention to. And so for me, that tends to be my feet and to feel them rolling on the ground. And then when my mind does wander, I find myself getting frustrated at myself because it keeps wandering and I keep having to pull it back. Until I allow myself to think of it in the same way I think of like working out, right? Each time my mind wanders and I pull it back to that central thing, it's the same way that I think about a push-up, right? And you don't get frustrated at yourself for having to do a push-up, right? Each time it has a purpose as much as the strength or the ability to control the mind in the first place. And so I find myself going back, if I have to pull it back, well, I'm thankful that I pulled it back. If I don't have to pull it back, well, I'm thankful that I was able to stay in that moment with my full attention there.
Yeah, so there's different ways we can bring our attention back. And one common way is we return to our senses. So we begin to pay attention, what am I hearing? Without labeling it, oh, that's a terrible noise, I don't like that. Or trying to figure it out, wait, what kind of bird is that? Let me think. So it's just going back to what we're hearing, if we can smell anything, taste, touch, our feet touching the ground, and then of course our visual, what we're seeing. And so anytime, one way to help us move back into that, that vertical axis is to be aware of our senses. What are we sensing? And that often is a way that can really help us to be alert. Okay, great. Okay, we're going to stop there, and we're going to break for lunch. Lunch is in probably about 10 minutes. Christina may have an announcement to make.
I do. I actually have a few announcements. First, I would like to introduce Terry and Nick from Portico to share a couple of things with us. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Christina. Sorry, I was supposed to do this last night, but I was having problems with my contact, so I had to leave. So just briefly, a few minutes. Have you seen the Facebook version of the Child's Prayer? Now I lay me down to sleep with the second line, I pray the door my soda keep. Children are famous for replacing words with what they hear, not what was said. My friend's daughter, whose dad is a music teacher, reminded her younger brother to cough into his oboe. Of course, we all know that the wise men brought baby Jesus gold, Frankenstein, and myrrh. Admittedly, wearing masks does not help us hear correctly either. But what I think is worth considering, it is also because we are moving too fast and juggling too many responsibilities. Does that sound familiar? Kind of the theme that we have here. Multiple tasking works for a very small percentage of people. Most of us just waste time and energy retracing steps as we task switch. We think we are being proficient when in fact, a study by the National Bureau of Economic Research revealed that multitasking reduces work performance by 40%. Now this is something that resonates with our confession and forgiveness last night. Rachel Stafford writes in her book, Only Love Today, it is necessary to nurture your body, your mind, your soul, your relationships, your faith, your spiritual self, and your passions. What is not necessary is responding to all emails or texts immediately, feeling guilty when we say no, to please others at the expense of our health and our families, do tasks at a proficiency level of 100% every day, or deprive ourselves of sleep in order to accomplish everything. Ms. Stafford's life-saving truth is, even losing ourselves in good works is still losing ourselves. Even the one who handles everything must rest and restore. Even the most mindful need to evaluate their priorities every once in a while. And even the best sometimes stumble. We cannot change the lost moments when we were emotionally or physically absent, but today we can push away the urgent so we can see what is necessary. And I wrote this before I even knew any of this stuff. Being good stewards of what we are given is certainly part of taking care of what is necessary. So I just ask one more time that you take a deep cleansing breath. And listen for just a few minutes about some Portico updates. Okay, so all of us who are plan members received an email about 2022 ELCA health benefits recently. If you missed it, you can find it on My Portico once you sign in under News at the bottom of the opening page. In a brief summary, the lowest ELCA primary health contribution baseline rate increase in 8 years of 3%. And that's thanks to all of you taking advantage of your benefits this last year. Just thank you. No change to current ELCA primary health deductibles, out-of-pocket limits, prescription drug cost share, and co-insurance, all that staying the same. A double-digit contribution decrease for retired and non-sponsored ELCA Medicare primary health benefit members, and that's because of negotiating prescription drugs through Humana. So we're for only Medicare primary. We are moving from Express Scripts to Humana prescription drugs. I have information, so please see me at my table. We have a new hearing aid benefit for adults and voluntary vision care services coverage delivered in response to member feedback. The voluntary vision care coverage is for all plan members, whether you waive health insurance or not. Okay, so that's important for you to know and pay attention to. Oftentimes, if you waive health insurance, you check out when I talk about the health plan. While these changes will impact individuals and congregations differently, Portico's responsibility as the ELCA's benefit ministry is to support the long-term interests of our entire community. So as a reminder, your organization, churches, will select its 2022 ELCA primary health benefit option October 4th to 15th. If you want to learn more about Gold Plus versus Silver Plus and the recommendation that was made by the Church Council in 2019, also please come and see me. I can talk you through this, just something to think about for your organization. In late October, members will begin your selection process, and it's going to be by email. There will not be a general announcement about this. So I encourage you, if you haven't been receiving Portico emails, you may want to go in my Portico and check to make sure that we have the address that you have, or call us so that you make sure you're getting the emails, or check spam, of course. And finally, retirement may feel like, or even be, a long way off, right? None of you are going to retire. Don't tell your bishop if you are. But you can increase your confidence and peace of mind about the future. We have a series of 6 recorded sessions that Fidelity hosted this summer that are on the website. I'm happy to show you where to find those. They're really good. They give you an overall basic idea about things to think about and look at. So again, as always, I'm available to answer questions. I do have a sign-up sheet for this afternoon. Please feel free to make time to just sit down and talk to me or grab me anytime. I will not be here tomorrow morning, but I will be here through this evening. So thanks again, and thanks for delaying lunch for a few minutes.
Thank you, Terry. And if you are planning on retiring, please tell the Synod office. But please don't for a while. I have a couple other people to announce. I want to call up Pastor Emily Larson and Devin Buckles, our campus ministry pastor.
Thank you all. It is so fun to actually be with you in person. So both Emily and I started during COVID, and so we haven't gotten a chance to actually gather with colleagues and really feel the truth that we're not alone, right? So it's so good to be here with you. First, I just want to bring a word of gratitude from us and from students. So some of you have already heard this story, but recently on campus, students were choosing what they wanted their worship topic to be, and one of the topics was phrased as grace in this crazy world. Like, where is God's grace in the midst of, this was last spring, all the difficulty that they were in the midst of. And one of the answers that they came up with during worship where they saw God's grace was in you, in people who choose to support them, even though they've never met them. Like, when it really clicked for them that campus ministry is supported by congregations and individuals to make sure that there is a community there to welcome them when they arrive at college, they were like, people who have never met me are making sure that this exists for me, and that's God's grace. So know that it's felt and it makes a difference, and we're so grateful to be able to be doing that work on behalf of the broader church. And do you know how long campus ministry has existed at Bemidji?
Oh my gosh. So since 1956.
Okay, and like similar, close to 70 years.
Incredible.
Yeah. So a time when the ELCA really used the E word, right, and was evangelical and showed up at a place where otherwise people wouldn't have that community. And then we just have a couple of updates for you for some fun things that are happening on campus this year.
So part of my role at Lutheran Campus Ministry is to help create a new synodically authorized worshiping community in the Bemidji area. And we have called it a community called Grace, and the vision for this community is that the leadership would be made up primarily of young adults, so millennials and beyond, folks who are in their 20s and 30s. And the vision for this started actually long before I walked into the picture. Folks were getting together and realizing that when we look around at a lot of our congregations, we don't often see people who are my age, who are in their 30s, unless they have kiddos that they're bringing to worship. And so what are some ways that we can bring the church outside of our church walls and meet people where they're at and have some conversations about things that people want to talk about that are topical to young adults today, things like what's going on in the world. Not that those things aren't relevant to all of us and to our congregations as well, but just trying to create some spaces that people might feel comfortable in and feel especially welcomed in and interested in. So we're starting with Pub Theology, which will be a new adventure for us. And also a book study on a really wonderful book called Native by Caitlin Curtis. You can find some info in the back. Dominique and I have a couple of tables set up.
And And the biggest update this year with Crossroads at MSUM is that after 70 years of building relationships on campus, we have been invited as to have a contract with campus, and I serve as campus chaplain, which there's only like a few of those in the country at a state school. Yeah. Praise God for that. I think it really came out of COVID, honestly, and really seeing how needed another confidential, listening, non-anxious presence, how helpful that would be for students. And so the tricky piece though, right, is that like all, many anyways, higher ed institutions, they are cutting funding and cutting positions and that sort of thing. So it's funded by Crossroads, but campus provides office space and the ability to actually live out our mission, right, to serve all faculty and staff and students. And so it's a trial year and it's a huge gift to be there, but it also means an interesting division of time. So I'm part-time, so it means like 8 hours campus chaplain, 8 hours Crossroads, and then figuring out fundraising and connecting with congregations and all of you as well. So our dream is to expand that position so that we can really serve campus really well. And we're starting a campaign called the Today and Tomorrow campaign to start working towards that vision. So you can expect a letter in the mail to your congregation, and I would love the opportunity to visit with you and your council and just kind of talk together about what a partnership in ministry might look like. And from Emily and I both, really also to hear from you what it would look like for us to support and partner with you. If it means showing up and making sure your high schoolers know that campus ministry exists almost anywhere they go and that we'd be happy to connect them or whatever it is that would serve you well.
Yeah, so Pastor Dominique has on her table back there a little sign-up sheet, and we would both of you, or both of us would encourage you to please sign up because Pastor Dominique and I would both love to come to your congregation on a Sunday, preach for you, bring a student with us if possible, and just give a temple talk and spend some time with you. Again, just to emphasize that campus ministry exists everywhere, and we would love to be a continuation of that faith connection for the students that you have in your congregations. In addition, we've put out a really awesome resource this past year with the help of the Synod, Campus Ministries Sunday, from a number of our campus communities, both MSUM, Bemidji State, and UND, Concordia, thank you. So we all got together, we recorded a worship service and made that available for your congregations to use, and we hope to continue that as well. So if we're not able to come in person, please consider using that online sort of COVID-friendly version as well.
Thank you all.
Pastor Angie Larson has a couple of things to say. You might know her as Deacon Angie Larson. She got ordained this past summer, and she's here to share about the Calvary Partner.
Hey everybody. I came in about the same time, so there's part of me that's like, yay, colleagues! I haven't gotten to meet a lot of you. I moved here right before COVID started. So I'm Angie Larson. I get to serve over at Calvary here in Alexandria. Many of you probably know Hans Dahl, who's been the lead pastor there for a while. Unfortunately, his father passed away last week. So Hans was originally slated to talk to you just for a little bit, but Hans and John Dahl are both on our ministry team, and so we're praying for them as they mourn the loss of George. His funeral is tomorrow. So I am standing in their place to talk to you a little bit about the Calvary Partner Network. So throughout, a number of years ago, Calvary was approached by West Mo Church. West Mo was having a hard time finding someone to come in and lead their small congregation. West Mo is only about 13 miles from Calvary, and so they asked Calvary, said, hey, can you help us? And that birthed this idea of the Calvary Partner Network. In the middle of COVID, Pastor Hans and I wrote a grant for to the Lilly Foundation, and we were gifted this Lilly Foundation grant to help rural congregations thrive. The vision is that we'll come in and help resource, collaborate, kind of partner with rural congregations with the help of this grant through an open network system. So if you go on the website, which is calvarypartners.org, you can go ahead just today and sign up for the Open Network. What we have on our Open Network are resources that are free for you to use. One of the partnerships we've been able to use is Orange Curriculum. So there's all of the Orange Curriculum for kid and student ministries that you could need available there on the Open Network for congregations to use. There's also messages. If you're going to be gone a particular week and you want to stream a message, those messages are available to use, as well as sermon series. And we're continuing to build this Open Network up. There are ways that you can get involved, but I really want to encourage you to go to this website. It's calvarypartners.org, and just sign up for the Open Network, because that way it'll give you a chance to kind of get free resources, and who doesn't love the free resources? So we're excited to be able to partner with rural congregations to sit there and say, how can we best do ministry together at this time so that we're not all reinventing the wheel? Oftentimes I think in church we kind of do that, don't we? So we want to share things collaboratively. And then also create support teams, so ways for you to get involved with other congregations that maybe are experiencing some of the same similar struggles that we kind of all are right now. But the Calvary Partner Network is available for all of you. If you have more questions about it, you're welcome to find me during lunch. Otherwise, I know that Hans and John would love to talk to you about it. You can find that still on that same website, calvarypartners.org. Thanks.
For our final announcement, Melbourne's bookstore the pop-up shop is in the program center. I sometimes call it the gym, so it's the large building, not that long building right there, but the next one over. Go check them out. And dinner is at 5:30, and I'm going to call up Pastor Everett.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm here to describe what our next event is this afternoon following lunch. You may see on your schedule it says rest. So I recognize that in reality at this exact moment, everybody's sitting in between myself and lunch. So I'll try to keep my explanation to 15 minutes or less. I know we're all hungry, but no, I think I can do it in about 2 minutes. So I just want to describe a couple things. One is when we designed Rhythms of Grace, this retreat, we wanted to give ourselves, encourage ourselves to take permission to rest. Resting, recognizing that may be sleeping, that may be hiking, that may be reading, that may be reconnecting, that may be going on a bike ride, or golfing, or whatever activity you may find. So we just want to encourage you to give yourself permission to rest between 1 and 5:30 in whatever that setting that may be. We do have handouts. Some of you may have got them in the mail. Others may have been emailed. I'm sure that if you looked in your pockets or in your binders, you may not have that exact brochure, but it's okay. What we've done is taped the rest brochure on all of the exits and entrances to the chapel and to the dining facility. And what it looks like is it has rest in the center, and it has all different activities that you can do indoors or outdoors. It has an address, it has a phone number so that you can identify what you're interested in doing and go ahead and do that. Obviously, you are not limited to these activities, but I do want to highlight a couple. We do have indoor activities such as going antiquing with an address that's in Alexandria. We've also got the Carlos Creek Winery with address and phone number. And another piece that I believe Pastor Allie will be coming up in just a moment to explain is talking about Grit and Grace, which will be 3 to 5 p.m. In the chapel for women connected to our synod. So those are some of your indoor activities. Outdoor activities, we have a couple things. One is you can go to Lake Carlos State Park. You can still golf. And we've also talked to the bike shop in town. I know it's a little bit cold out, but if you are adventurous, you're more than welcome to do that. But I do want to make one quick announcement that unfortunately our Luther Crest water activities are canceled, but as I'm looking around, I don't think that anyone is sad about that reality. But if you are, just let me know, and I'll grieve with you and help you find another activity. It will be all right. We've got a lot of options, but again, before I pass this off, just find time to breathe, find time to rest. We recognize that we don't do that enough. Oftentimes our schedules are so packed. So our hope and our prayer for all of us is to just slow down, breathe, rest, reconnect with God, reconnect with our neighbors and friends, and continue throughout this retreat. So I will be followed by Allie, who will talk about grit and grace.
Thanks, Eric. So as a part of this rest time on behalf of the Resiliency for Women in Ministry Affinity Group, I'd like to invite the women who are here to come and join us here at 3 o'clock to do kind of a different kind of rest, a time to receive some grace. We will be led by Mary Francis here in the chapel for a couple of hours. It'll be a time to explore the grit and grace of being women in ministry and our lives, a time rooted in Scripture, a time to bless one another, and a time to just rest and receive that grace that God gives to us. We spend so much of our life and ministry giving grace and being the people who tell people about grace, and now this is an opportunity for women in ministry to come and receive some grace and be together in community. So I hope you'll join us. Anything else, Chris? Oh, are we singing?
We are. So we are going to lead us in prayer. We've fortunately had a willing and excited volunteer, Alan Westby, our synodically authorized minister, is going to lead us in prayer called Johnny Appleseed before we head over to the chapel for singing, and we hope you can join along.
Everybody, please rise. And I want the enthusiasm for this Johnny Appleseed, just as if this chapel was filled 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th graders. Thank you. All right. Oh, the Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and the apple seed. The Lord is good to me. Amen, 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 amen. Go in peace and eat.